And I believe we are live at the 2022 Canadian Indoor Singles Championships. I'm Jake Shuknik, and we are currently featuring on Rink 5 the second game for the men today. It's a battle between John McDonald of Alberta and Doug Prop of Saskatchewan. Based off on the huzzah, Zoom Zoom, please let me know if audio is okay, if it's actually live coming through, you're able to see and hear this. This is the first end of the first set, so we did happen to just get in on time here as John and Doug are getting us going. If anybody was watching yesterday, you'll recognize John, as he was our only feature match yesterday against Pat Bird, and he's still playing well based off of that first toucher of the game. With the blue bowls, he is, and Doug Prop from Saskatchewan's got green bowls to match his green shirt. And so the men are actually 5 games in to this 11 game round robin that they're in, and Jerome Kirby sits alone at the top of the standings 5-0, while looking at John McDonald, he's 3-2, currently in 4th place, and Doug Prop is 1-4. I believe that puts him down at 10th place at the moment. Good afternoon, James Rimmer. Nice to have you tuning in. I'll say afternoon for you, knowing that you're based out of Ontario. For me and the rest of us here in BC, it is still currently the morning. So we're watching John McDonald and Doug Prop right now. The game that we're going to be doing after this will be approximately 1 p.m. local time, so that's about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours from now. It'll be between Rainbow Lung and Linda Ng to get our first women's match of the game on TV here. So based off the current setup here, it looks like John is chasing down his last bowl. He's definitely lying 1. From my point of view, it looks like that could be 2. Probably a couple. Doug's not going to ask. He's going to come down and take a look himself to see what's what. And you'll notice that we're telecasting Rink 5 today. Yesterday we tried Rink 4, so I'm curious how the angles will play out. For those of you who were watching yesterday, let me know if you prefer 5 versus 4 going forward. And as always, if you want to check out the scores and standings, you can go to bowlscanada.com, and then up in the top menu, you'll see events and results, and under national events, you can go down to the 2022 Indoor Singles Championships. And when you scroll about halfway down that page, you'll find a link that'll take you to the scores and standings page, which is mostly mobile friendly too. How long are the rinks at the Pacific Indoor? Good question, James. So the PIBC is full-length rinks. I believe that makes them 120 feet. I'm not sure if they're any longer than that. You would have to ask someone more knowledgeable than I. You can maybe make out that there's only 3 and then a sort of a walkway down the middle and then another 3. So there's only 6 rinks here at the Pacific Indoor Bowls Club in Vancouver, British Columbia. And Doug just made a beautiful shot with his last bowl to rest out John. That should be good for 1, I would think. And of course here at the indoor singles they play 2 9-end sets. And if the sets are split, or if both sets are tied, I guess, they'll play a 3-end tiebreak. They are kicking them in. I'm not sure how many that would have been. I'm assuming just 1 for Doug, so I'll update accordingly. Make it a quick 1-0 Saskatchewan lead. Doug Prop plays out of the Mayfair Lawn Bowling Club, I believe, one of 4 or 5 in the province of Saskatchewan. Glad you like this angle, James. Yes, it's much easier. I've got the camera on a tripod on top of the table, and you'll see at the other camera angle that there's some seating, so it's able to get a higher, better, cleaner angle. But You can see from the wall at the back there, and you can maybe just make out the camera to the left of Doug Prop right now, that there's not a lot of space back there, so there's not a lot of wiggle room for getting a better camera angle. How fast does the carpet run? So it's anywhere between 16 and 17 seconds usually, and I've learned from my time being here that the temperature actually affects it. So if it's summer versus winter, if the AC's pumping or not, the colder it gets, the faster it gets. So when they timed this the other day, it was about 16 and a half, give or take, which is probably the fastest greens you're going to find anywhere in Canada. That's a beautiful opening bowl there from John, just coming up about 1.5 to 2 feet short. Right back onto that center line though, and of course with this angle you can see the tee down next to the little bit of ways from the right of the marker. You can see the tee and you can see the dots going up the middle. The dots are 1 meter apart. Holy poop, that's fast. Yeah, it is a good pace. If you've ever played in the southern hemisphere, that's sort of the norm. You're going to be playing 15, 16 seconds, sometimes 17, 18 if you're lucky. And personally, I find it to be much more enjoyable playing on a fast green because you're not throwing your back out. Much less force required, so you're able to play with more finesse. It does require a different skill set though. And of course the shots you can play are different as well. In Canada on outdoor greens, a lot of people can play that 6 feet through the head weight, swinger weight, and it's usually pretty reliable, but on fast greens that is a very, very difficult shot to play. So the types of shots you can play here at the PIBC are probably different than what most people are used to playing on the outdoor greens. Doug Prop's been here probably every year that I've been here at the indoor, so 5, 6 years running. So he's no stranger to what it's like to play on this surface. And John McDonald was here in 2016, I believe, but not since then. So it's been a while since he was here, and being a sort of an intermediate player himself in terms of years playing, I believe he's only been playing for 8 years or so, so it's not like he's been around for 100 years. So he is doing tremendously well for his second go-round here at the indoor singles. That is a really good-looking head for John at the moment. That's either a cold draw off, or I guess Doug could maybe play some weight into that and try and push John out, but it's a little risky. Jack's probably going to move, so I think really his only option right now is just a cold draw. And Charlie, do you happen to remember who won that game on Rink 5 against Doug in the battle of what was then a Battle of Saskatchewan? And yes, Zoom Zoom, if you ever do get the chance to go to Australia, I highly recommend. I've been there once, and the greens are phenomenal. It does take some getting used to, as the pace is quicker than what you're used to back here in Canada. But 10 out of 10 would recommend to do again. The only downside of going to Australia is the long flight. So Doug's last bowl came up well through the head. I'm not sure if he was trying to make some contact, but that leaves an opportunity here for John to draw for 2, or maybe even a little trail for 3. John's in the ballpark. Will it stop in time? Yes, it will. So that's 2 for sure, maybe even 3. I'm not quite sure if he'll be able to stretch that measure long enough. Zoom Zoom, are you aware of the wind effect when you're watching those Australian and New Zealand games? There are specific strategies for wind in the southern hemisphere that you don't need to worry about here in the northern hemisphere, because the greens are so slow that wind doesn't really have much of an impact on your bowls the way it does down south. Such as when you're playing fours, the team will stand to block the wind, so all 3 of your players will block the wind as the bowl's finishing, as one example. Alexis, it should be. Takes a few minutes after we're done for YouTube to buffer and get it going, but yes, the women's game will be on YouTube and it should be available for replay at a future time. I'm not quite sure how long it takes before it's going to be live for you to watch, but yes, it should eventually be there. So that was 3 for John McDonald to give him a quick 3-1 lead here after 2 ends. Apologies, let me update that for you. 2 ends in the books, and John's got his first bowl a couple of feet past the jack. So you can see the seating behind the rink down where the players are being a raised platform, and you can also see the camera there just above Doug Prop's head. So that's why the other camera angle is able to have such a nice clean view, and not quite as nice from this angle, but it's the best we can do for now. You can see on the rink to your left is Harenbar 2 from BC against Carter Watson from Saskatchewan. It looks like Carter's up to a 5-zip lead after 2 ends so far. And then on the rink to the right is Pat Bird versus Jerome Kirby. Pat Bird is up 3-zip over Jerome after 2 ends currently. And of course, with no time limits here, the players can take as long as they need to get these 2 9-end sets in. This is their last game of the day before it switches over to the women, and then the women play 2 games as well. And that's a beautiful bowl from John McDonald. Nice adjustment, sir. I can see that Doug Prop's playing with a Henselite bowl. Not quite sure what the model is. Could be a Tiger, could be a Tiger 2, I'm not quite sure. Just missing the jack on his way through. Charlie, perhaps you can enlighten us on what kind of bowl Doug Prop's using. I would assume that these are not new to him. The lefty John McDonald is playing with a Taylor, I think he said GT or something like that. I'm not familiar with what that type of bowl. So it's a righty versus a lefty battle here, and so far it looks like the lefty has taken a slight lead. Doug is still coming up tight. That's 3 in a row that he's come across. I think he was looking to grab the jack and trail it back to his other ones there, but he didn't give it enough. And so John is playing the safe forehand here. He also has an option to pop the jack out to the side and try and count a couple more. But it looks like he's putting in a safety net, trying to go around behind, and clipped Doug's bowl on his way through. So it is definitely just the 1 right now for John from my angle. Something of interest, perhaps, is that Doug Prop has the only registered coach here for this event. None of the players have a coach except for Doug, and he's got Vince Mai, the BC native Canadian international player, as his coach. We'll see if he makes use of him throughout this game. Yes, Charlie, Doug is playing with a green bowl, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're probably right that they're a set of Tiger 2s. And Shane, yes, Vince is coaching Doug. He's the only coach here, which is surprising to me in a way. Vince has played internationally for years, doesn't really play much anymore, but he did used to have quite the name for himself back in the day. Played at the World Cup a few times. I think he's got a bronze medal under his belt at the World Cup. So he knows a thing or two. Shane, you've got a good memory. Those finals a few years back, Vince versus Pat, were incredible matches. Absolutely. So Pat Bird, the Albertan on rink 4 to your left, he's been here enough times that he's had many finals matches, and yeah, Vince used to basically live here, so he knows the greens like the back of his hand. So some of those final matches were absolutely incredible for sure. And here's a beautiful bowl here from Doug to start it off. We'll see what John does for his opening bowl, knowing that Doug has a front, not quite a resting toucher anymore. There's probably a couple inch gap between bull and jack, and he's come up meter and a third short, which is definitely not the opening bowl you want when you have a opponent in front of the jack. Ball is in Doug's court at the moment now. He's got pressure started with his opening bowl. His second is not a mile away from replicating it. That's not a terrible caterpillar if you're familiar with that kind of drill, but ended up in kind of not a great position, as now that leaves a wing to use if John wants to play weight at that later in the end. John has definitely made an adjustment here, looking to outdraw it from the looks of things, and look at this, he is not a mile away, folks. Good grief. Well played, John McDonald. I would not be surprised if Doug switched hands here to try to play into his own onto John, but the way his toes are pointing on the mat right now, I don't think he is. Doug is humming and hawing here, not quite sure what he wants to do. Indecisive. Usually when you're indecisive on the mat, it's going to be an indecisive bowl, but he is going to throw weight at this. Interesting. I don't think the marker quite understands what Doug is asking. Doug's asking if he's up or down, and the marker said he's down 2, but that's not the case. He's only down 1. Slight hiccup there, but I think we've got it sorted now. Doug is down 1. John McDonald is holding shot. And I'm not sure what Doug is playing here. Drawing into the head. Good grief. Great effort. If he gets the flop, if he can get the flop, it's not falling over though, so it is still 1 to John, and both players are going to come down and take a look now. Tough situation for John to be in here, because you don't really want to mess with that, but there's a pretty easy opportunity here for Doug to play onto his left turn most of his front bowls onto John and punch John through. Doesn't need to be super aggressive either, so there's a chance here that Doug could get 4 out of this end. So John, you need to get a second shot, get something in there, but you don't want to make it for him. You don't want to make it any easier. You don't want to give him a bigger target for a drive either. Zoom, that's a very real possibility. There could be a gymnast upstairs that does a backflip and causes that bowl to fall. For anybody tuning in, this is in the lower floor of a multi-use building, where upstairs there's a gymnastics studio, and the gymnasts are quite loud with their jumping and movements. So John's choosing the strategy to say, I want to get best back, which is a safe option to steer clear of it, but it does still leave the window wide open here for Doug to pop a 4. So Doug was back here talking to Vince, trying to decide what shot to play. Having a good look at it still. As we are waiting, I can see down on rink 1, it looks like Kerry is up 3-0 over Allen. So Ontario over BC, 3-zip after 2. Middle green there is Eric Allipo versus Tim Mason, and it looks like they're tied 2-2 after 4. Rink 3 is Pierre Vanderhoot versus Jim Duholke, and it looks like Pierre is up to a 3-zip lead after 2 over Jim. Pat Bird's 5-zip over Jerome Kirby after 4. And Carter Watson's up 6-2 over Haren Bartu after 4. So now that Doug is on the mat, he is definitely playing the proper hand in my mind. Anything into this? His bowl onto John is good for 4. He is very close and got it. He got it. Beautiful bowl there, Mr. Prop. So now that John has best back, really no danger in firing at this because you're not going to be any worse off than you are right now. I would expect some weight. Doug has a bit of a wing there that he can use if he can get the split. Anything into that head and you're better off than you are now, so I don't expect this to be a draw by any means. Here we go. That looks wide. He has missed the whole head. So that'll be 3 for sure, and I think 4 going to Doug Prop from Saskatchewan. Teach me how to Dougie. I love that, Charlie. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that will make it 6-3 after 4 ends. So it looks like Doug has the mat up 2 meters from the tee. So that'll make this a fairly short end. Doug is playing onto his backhand. And of course, being on a 16-second green, the draws are quite wide if you're using anything that's not a narrow bowl. Doug took quite a bit of grass there and came all the way back to the center line. John is playing the same hand. And outdoes him. That is number 1, numero uno. Tracking nicely. If he finds a friend, he is through the port. So I think that is still currently 1 to John at the moment. I think John has made another beautiful draw here to be good for 2. That is an excellent location. Everything past the jack so far, as we have a fairly short jack, short end. Doug is just on the high side, I think, but that might be good enough for 1. Probably a measure between John's lefternmost bowl and Doug's bowl. playing around to the back, playing some position, so I wonder if that means John thinks he's shot. We'll get some clarity here as Doug's asking the marker, is he up or down? And looks like a measure, so Doug was gonna go take a look, but then opted not to. Interesting. And yeah, no, he will. I would say smart move to get some clarity, but I don't know if it really changes his shot any at all, regardless of whether he's up one or down one. Still a pretty wide open draw. I don't see much of a trail or a weighted shot or anything else to play into here at the moment. Yeah, so Doug is playing once more on his backhand, which makes a lot of sense. That's all four on the backhand. Either kiss in off his or rest John's. Anything in there should be okay, and he's in the ballpark, but there we go. Got a bit of a flop in there, so that would make me think that his bull is now shot, but John's taking a look, so it might still be close enough for a measure. I suspect John is going to be playing the same type of shot. Doug's backhand, John's forehand, that same side of the rink. Just draw into it. And he's doing exactly as I suspected, playing on that forehand side for him side of the rink. Coming up a little bit narrow and a little bit short, I think. More short than narrow. As they walk down, I'll quickly thank the Government of Canada through Sport Canada for funding all of our national championships. Their support is greatly appreciated, as well as our other partners and sponsors. Kukri, our clothing supplier, Event Connect, our accommodations provider, and Nuthers, our awards provider. So that does look like it was one to Mr. Prop. So after 5 ends of play, he's got a 4-point lead, I believe. They are a little confused about what end they're on at the moment as they're talking back and forth and trying to confirm with the marker. Whew, rink next door. You can just see on the right, Carter Watson just made a beautiful little draw to tuck the jack in just behind of Heren's 2 red ones up front. That's put Heren in a treacherous position as Carter's up 7-2 after 5. This is their 6th end. And on the other side, Pat Bird's up 5-2 over Jerome Kirby after 5. Jerome is the only one undefeated at this point in the event on the men's side, so Pat's looking to give him his first loss and bring him back down with the rest of the crew trying to battle into the top of the standings. So this is a much longer end than what we saw last time. Doug still does have the mat up a few meters from the tee, but Jack's further along. It's 1, 2, 3.5 meters from the tee. He's exactly 1 meter short. Ah, Shane, interesting. You went with Kukri for your new club shirts at New West. Loving their gear. Interesting. They tend to have a catalog of stuff we can get from them each year, and we sell that at our majors national championships. But we also sometimes get creative and design our own stuff outside of their custom or their generic catalog of stuff. Kukri was also the clothing supplier for the Commonwealth Games this year, as they were at the last Commonwealth Games too. So every athlete in every sport at the Commonwealth Games got a kit full of clothing, courtesy of Kukri. So Doug's got a bowl 1 meter front and 1 meter behind. John's got one 1.5 meters in front, and another one 1.5 meters in front. And you can see he's got his hands on his head there. Knew right away, didn't send it, didn't give it enough weight. Still a fairly wide open draw here. Nothing particularly close at the moment based off of what we've seen the previous few ends. And Doug's looking to change that. Here we go. That will be number 1 for sure. I think Doug's probably lying 2 and a measure right now. We'll see if John can make the adjustment. His first 2 came up 1.5 meters short. So this third one is crucial for him to try and cut things down or draw it off clean. Definitely added the weight, but a touch too much. 1.5 meters through the head. Forgot to put on the Mitzola oil. I'm assuming that's an inside joke in Alberta. And Doug is right back there with John, just resting his bowl through. From where I'm sitting, it still looks like it's 2 and a measure for Doug. I don't think his last one is going to beat the top right one of John's. Wide open on this hand, though, to draw it off clean. We've seen some impressive draws before, so this is nothing out of the ordinary to expect to be able to draw within 1 inch or 2 to take it, but looks like John might have lost his weight control here this end, as that's a third one coming up 1.5 meters short. So if he's lost his weight, that's a big opportunity here for Doug to put this set away. He's holding 2 and a look for sure, which would give him a 6-point lead with 3 ends to go in the set. 1, 2. Marker has the measure ready. Learning a lot about this Mitzola oil. So I think that was in. And it was too, actually. So good for 4. My goodness. I did not expect that. I thought it was only 2 and a look. That is a turning point for this set. I think that more or less 1, 2, 3, 4 gives the set basically to Dougie Prop here. He is very much in the driver's seat now. 8-point lead with 3 to go. As long as you don't give up more than 2 each end, you're fine. John is asking how many dots past is the jack, as we might have another jack measure coming up here, possibly. The umpires just did that on rink 6 for Carter and Heren. But I think they're saying it's okay. Looking down on rink 1 between Kerry Lucier and Alan Loss. Alan's taken the lead now 4-3 after 4 over Kerry. Tim's got a 5-3 lead over Eric on rink 2. Pierre and Jim Hulky. It looks like Pierre is up 5-1 over Jim. Pat Bird is up 5-3 over Jerome, and Carter is still up 7-3 over Heren. And so back to a fairly short end here, as the mat is up 2 meters from the tee. 2 meters in a mat length, I suppose. Owen K. I'm assuming that's Owen Kirby tuning in to cheer on his uncle. Nice to see you, Owen. Taking a break from work, I would assume. So Jerome is currently the only one undefeated on the men's side. 5-0 in this 11-game round robin. So John is coming up narrow here. I'm not quite sure on his weight. Probably another 2 meters through the head. Both players here seem to be playing a little bit looser than they were to start the end. There were some really tight ends, tight heads to start this game, but now it seems like things are changing a little bit, getting a little bit looser, a little more spread out. As Doug has another one that's 2.5 meters past the jack. See if John can make an adjustment and get one close here. Rink next door, Carter Watson just made a really nice drive, but punched Heren's bull right back in about a foot from the ditch with it. So even though he made a great drive to put the jack in the ditch, punched his opponent's bull to go right next to it. So good shot, poor result. Doug is still struggling to get one close. I believe that is 1 or 2 to John right now. I'm not quite sure how many Johnny picked up there, but I believe it's definitely 1 as he's holding the mat. So up and back here in this first set, and it was actually 2. So 6-point game, 2 to go. So John's looking for 3 and 3 or 4 and 2 as his only options to try and tie this first set. Putting Doug comfortably in the driver's seat. John stretching this out here. The jack is on the second dot past the tee, so that means it's 2 meters from the tee. And his bull is coming up about 6 inches short of the tee, weight-wise. And Doug is coming up quite short, just about 2 meters short. Again, here seems like both players are struggling with their weight, as John's first was almost 2 meters heavy and Doug's first was almost 2 meters light. So we'll see who can figure this out. John's definitely erring on the side of caution here, as he needs to pick up a 3 or a 4, so anything past the jack is in his favor. Gives him options. And here's a great adjustment from John. There we go. That'll be number 1. Doug is still struggling here, leaving the door open for John to collect a handful. Didn't make much of an adjustment off his last one. Opportunities here for John. With 2 more to come here, he could either just draw them in and try and score 3, or he could try and get a little jack movement, trail it back, see if he can get that 4th one in. But this is not helpful if he doesn't beat Doug's bowl, and he doesn't, so that is a whoops. That's not going to help at all. Not really in the draw line at all, but we'll make sure that Doug is taking enough grass to get outside around that. He is switching hands completely, so maybe that did mess with his eyes. That is a nice improvement from Doug. I guess switching hands helped. He is now only 3 feet behind the jack, his closest one so far. You are correct, Roy. The Birdman and Jerome Kirby are all tied up 5-5 after 7. And based off of the head on the rink to your left, which you can't see, it looks like Jerome is lying 3. And Pat has 1 bowl left to come, so that could really make or break that set for them. So opportunity here for Doug to put this set to bed, basically. If he can cut John to 1 or draw it off himself, which he's trying. Can already hear Vince clapping. Vince loves it. There we go. So that will be the first set to Doug Prop, but because the plus minus might come into effect for tiebreakers later, they do still need to play the next end, even though Doug has already won this set. And on the rink to the left, Pat Bird is looking to draw to cut down, and he has come up a 1.5 meters short, which will give 3 shots to Jerome Kirby, I believe, which would make it an 8-5 lead for Jerome going into the last end of their first set. So the -1 next to Doug Prop's name will indicate that he has won the first set, even though there's still one end to be played in it. Alfred, nice to have you tuning in. Alec Deschamps, our communications guru. Events and Communications Coordinator, I think the official title is, tuning in. Alec was hired in April, I believe, and was at the Youth Championships, the Majors in Burlington, went out to Victoria to do the senior triples, so busy summer. Shane, you are absolutely right. There's nothing better than going into N9 and knowing you can't lose the set. But I will say that that does make it tricky, because now what do you do with this end? It's hard to keep that level of focus, concentration going. You can't really just take this end off and then try to start again the following end when set 2 begins. I think personally I would rather be up 3 or up 4 going into N9, where it's still possible for them to tie it or win it, but it puts you in the driver's seat, so you still need to play your game, still need to be on your toes. You just have a little more confidence. Right now, knowing that you've already won the set, this end virtually doesn't matter. Shane, I would love to play you in singles. I think you and I would have a good time driving with every shot. So now that there is no pressure on this end, we can see that John has locked one in behind Doug's got one in front and a couple of loose bowls in behind. And Doug's again a little on the high side and a little quick. Quickly give a big thanks to the umpire crew. Dudley Knox is the head event umpire, and today we've got Davey Matthew and Annie Matthew as the two assistants here with him. Shout out to them, and also big thanks to all the volunteers here at the PIBC. Serge, Eric, Sam, and the rest of the markers, ladies in the kitchen, all that fun stuff. It is tremendous, I learned, that the markers here at the PIBC, there's a bunch from other clubs in Vancouver pitching in to help out, so big group effort to make this event a success. Shout out to all the Vancouver clubs for pitching in to help. That's a great effort there from Doug to cut it to just 1 to John right now, I believe. And we will have a short break between sets, as I just heard Doug say he's got to take a quick break. Beautiful effort there from John. I'm not sure if John scored 1 or 2, but it does not really matter other than for the plus minus later. If you were able to hear that, Bobby Jean Charlton is clapping away beside me as Jerome made a nice shot on the rink next door. I will actually flip the camera so you can maybe see some of the other stuff going on. Rink on the right, Carter Watson playing with green bulls against Heren's reds. And the rink on the left, Jerome Kirby has red bulls with Pat's purple, green, blue, multicolored dark bulls. So to the rink on the right, Carter Watson's up 8-4, playing the last end of the first set. Need a hell of a shot here from Heren to try and tie that. I don't see much of an option at the moment. And then on the left, it looks like Pat Bird is lying a couple against Jerome Kirby, with Jerome being up 8-5, playing the last end of their first set. Not quite sure what Jerome was playing for there, as he is around back into the ditch, so definitely not what he was hoping for, but that might give Pat Bird a chance to tie that first set, if he can just draw in. So to the game on the right, it looks like Carter Watson has won that first set against Heren Bartu. Ah, 12-6. The marker has already indicated that John picked up 1 there to make it 12-6 in that first set. As a final score for set 1, in case you're interested. So time to restart, reset. Here we go again, set 2. Clean slate. Winner of the set gets to start the second set, so that's why Doug placed the mat. And we are coming up to a medium length jack. He's got the mat up quite a bit. Jack going to the second dot, just past the second dot from the tee, so that'll be about 5 inches short of 2 meters from the tee. We'll see what he starts us off with here on the second set with his first bowl. And that is leaving the door open here for John, as he is a meter short and 2 or 3 feet narrow. John's playing that same hand. Of course, here at the PIBC, you're not going to see the runs in the grass or any sort of trail to follow. Playing on artificial carpet, you're not going to see those lines. So you need to know your mark and pick it well. John also coming up narrow, but much better weight. Doug has made the weight adjustment, but I don't think he changed his line at all. And that is probably number 1. All 3 bulls taking the same line so far, it looks like. And John looks narrow here again. And yeah, all 4 bulls now taking the same line. James, do they move the rink side to side like the way you would on a natural green? Yes and no. So because they have dots on the center lines already, you can actually see, you know, the T and the white dots every meter out. They typically leave them like this for normal play, except for the finals. So when we play the finals, they will use sort of the boundary markers as the new centers. So the boundary marker between 4 and 5 will now be the center line for, I'm guessing, probably the men's gold medal game, and then the boundary marker between 5 and 6 will be the center line for the gold medal match on probably the women's game. So they do move the centers for the medal matches, but usually for most play, they just stick with what's there. Not sure if you can see the out of bounds markers way down at the end on the left and the right, but there's only maybe 2 feet, 2.5 feet to work with before you're into the side ditch. So there's really not much room to wiggle, even if you wanted to, unless you're cutting it down to 2 rinks from 3. I did learn from talking to Serge here, though, that these greens are about 18 years old. So the carpet is aged, but still tremendous shape. They actually had someone from Greengage, and I think Dale's here not too long ago, and they said that these carpets are in better condition than a bunch of clubs in the UK. And the UK obviously has the luxury of being able to get carpet manufacturers to install it close to home. No, so they don't allow really any kind of chalk here on these greens. So they do not have the center lines chalked, the side hog lines chalked, or anything like that. The dots along the center lines are not quite sure what sort of material they're made out of, some sort of plastic or a sticker. And they are there for good, but they don't use chalks for center lines or hog lines or anything like that. And so that is 1 to Doug Prop there. And they also don't let you use Grippo or really anything on your bowls, because they want to keep this carpet in the best possible condition for as long as possible. And so they're very particular about what shoes you can wear, what products, I guess, you could use on your bowls. Even the type of chalk, they don't let liquid chalk on here. It has to be either spray chalk or dry chalk, something that'll rub off. Liquid stuff's not allowed. And it has served them well, because 18 years later, you would never know that these carpets are as old as they are. They do have the equipment to stretch them, though. I learned they have some sort of a device that they put down, and you sort of kick it to stretch the carpet out to keep it as fast-paced as it is. And so they're able to do that in-house, and it's quicker than the old school fashion where you used to have people get on their hands and knees trying to hammer it out. So for those who are curious, on the rink to the left, I guess it's actually to the right now based on this camera angle, Jerome Kirby did win that set against Pat Bird. And Carter Watson did win his set against Heren Bartu. Tim won his set against Eric Gallipo. Looks like Pierre and Jim are still playing their first set, as are Kerry and Alan. Alan is up 11-4, so he will win that first set against Kerry. Jim Duholke and Pierre Vanderhoot. Jim is up 6-5, so that's a close game as they're entering the last end of their set, first set. Seems like both players are really struggling here with their weight in the second set. Very loose opening head here. John's bull there is number 1. Six now. Pierre versus Jim Duholke playing the final end of their first set, so I guess it's all tied up going into the final end. Pierre van der Hout from Ontario, Jim Duholke from BC. And that is over on rink number 3. Doug coming up well short there, but back on the center line. You can see on the left of your screen there, looks like Horan has put together a nice little head as he's got the red bulls on the jack. Of course, using a yellow jack, using an indoor jack. Indoor jacks are weighted a little bit heavier than outdoor jacks due to how easy it is to move them on such a quick carpet. And there's a nice bull from John. That'll be number 1 for sure. Looks like he's probably lying 2. 1 bull each to come. As Carter and Doug are bowling in unison, the 2 Saskatchewan reps here. Doug is looking to draw it off, and I think he has. That is probably good for shot. John's asking, is that good for shot? The marker's going to take a look and say, gotta be close. She's favoring John for 1 still. Interesting. It doesn't really change his shot either way. It's still just a wide open draw. Early in the second set, you want to find your draw weight back, as both players are struggling with that here at the moment. And John's coming up short here too. I asked this question yesterday, and I'll ask it again today. Any early picks on who we think is going to be in the finals now that a couple more rounds have been played? You can find the scores and standings on the bullscanada.com website under Events and Results, National Events, and 2022 Indoor Singles Championships. And then halfway down the page is a link to the scoring page, where right now Jerome Kirby is 5-0, Horan Bartu is 4-1, Jim Duholke, John McDonald, Tim Mason, Kerry Lucier, and Pat Bird are all 3-2. Alan Wass and Eric Gallipo are 2-3. Doug Prop, Carter Watson 1-4, and Pierre van der Hout still looking for his first win as he's 0-5. So we're all tied up at 1 here after 2 ends of play in the second set. Very confusing, deceptive to be playing an even number set the opposite direction. So this is the third end as they finished up opposite direction the first set. The winners of the men's and women's event here will be playing in the 2023 World Indoor Championships, the World Cup. They play indoor singles. I believe it's 2 7-end sets until you get to the playoffs, and then it goes to 9-end sets. And then they also team up and play a mixed pairs event together as well, so they get a 2-for-1 bang for the buck, representing Canada on the international scene. The World Cup, World Indoor Championships, is now also alternating between Australia and the UK. So it used to be held exclusively at the Warilla Bowls Club in Australia, but now with World Bowls amalgamating with the International Indoor Bowls Council, IIBC, they now have agreed to alternate it. So Every other year it's at Warilla, every other year it's somewhere in the UK. I believe the last event was held at Warilla, so I think that this event is going to be in the UK, but don't quote me on that. So John McDonald currently holding 2. Doug's looking to draw it off, and he's not a mile away. Tracking nicely. That will be numero uno as he gets some chalk on it. A little bit of spray chalk from the marker. Which, if you are in Canada, I would recommend you get your orders in early for spray chalk, as the shipping delays, it's difficult to get your hands on here in Canada. Something that can't be shipped by plane due to the compressed gas nature, so only by boat. We'll see if Doug can replicate his last bowl. He had a nice just toucher on his last one and replicating it nicely here again in the ballpark. Almost an identical bowl, but rubbed it too far. I don't know if he's still going to be getting 2 out of that. Excellent bowling from Doug, but probably needed a touch more grass to try and make sure he's holding 2 and not just 1. From where I'm sitting, I can't tell if he's actually good for 2. 1 bowl left each to come here. John needs to do almost what Doug just did and either trail the jack through or rub off of Doug's bowl to get it. Ideally, if he can chip it back to the left, he'll be laughing. Not much more than a draw, though. You don't really want to have anything more than a foot through. Definitely don't want to take yourself out either, so you've got to be treading lightly for his last bowl here, and it looks to be pretty close. In the ballpark, rubbing onto the front, so now it is for sure a very close one for Doug. You can see Vince Mai in the bottom left corner of your screen there. I think you might have had a word with Doug on what shot to play or what to do, maybe just a re-encouraging statement. Tell Bindi I say hi, Sarah. That's very adorable. Bindi, of course, being the most wonderful Bulls cheerleader that I've ever met. Was down at the Windsor Lawn Bowling Club for the Canadian Mixed Pairs Championships to cheer on Bailey and Jake Masterson to their bronze medal finish. Absolutely adorable pupper in the District 14, District 15 area, somewhere up there near Gore's Landing, Coburg area of Ontario. Doug is erring on the side of caution here. I think he was hoping to come down to rest John's bowl out, give it a roll, but way high. Shane. First indoor provincials was watching the World Cup indoors and thought it was 7 in sets, so thought he'd won the first set, but still 2 ends to go. Yeah, it is important to read the conditions of play before you play in any event because it's important to know how many ends there are in a game. Absolutely. That is something I will be discussing with the development committee about why we play 9 end sets when the World Cup is only 7. District 14 is the best, says Sarah Van Stein. I'm wondering if anybody else from Ontario is going to argue with her on that. So, 1 to Doug Prop there will make it 2-1 after 3. This is a tight battle. Sarah, I've played out of District 2, District 3, District 6, District 8, and District 16. So I can't say I've played out of 14 as a member yet, so that's still on my bucket list to do before I can cross off all the districts I've played out of. I've played in tournaments at clubs in every district, but I haven't actually been a member of those districts, of every district yet. For those of you who are unaware, Ontario, being as large as it is split up into 16 districts, which makes it a little bit easier to manage. Susan playing out of District 1 of 1 in Quebec. All the clubs in the Montreal area, with the exception of the newest one that just opened up in Dunnville, I believe. Sorry, not Dunnville, Drummondville. A couple of folks converted an old tennis court into a lawn bowling facility, so they're playing on a Rubico. That's a great question, Susan. I have absolutely no idea. I only know from talking to them this year that they were hoping to get it opened. They were hoping to get some people interested. I have no idea if they're a member of the Quebec Federation. If they are not, then they would not be a member of BCB, so then that would not be a official club that I should count. Good point. James, you're saying D14 is great, so conflict there. Are you saying you're starting conflict because you're saying it's great and not the best? Or are you saying there's no conflict and you're agreeing? Great shot there from Mr. Dougie Prop. Good for 2. That's okay, James. We'll forgive you this time. Baby brain will do that to you. So John turned around immediately, knew that he was narrow with this bowl. So opportunity here for Doug to really put some pressure on us. He's holding 2 and could plop in another one here to really put the pressure on for John's last bowl. Doug is watching this intently. I think he might have the feel, but he's playing with fire. Playing with fire there. If he would have been a touch wider and chipped the jack back, he would have been down 1. So fortuitous result. Good for 3 at the moment. John is looking to just draw it off, or at least draw to cut down, but that looks a little spicy for that line to me. A little spicy as he's tracking around behind. So that'll be 3 to Mr. Douglas Prop. Assuming that was 3, that would make it 5-1 for Mr. Dougie. Bill McCollum, the approximate speed of the green is about 16.5 seconds. They timed this on Monday and timed it at 16.5. Now that is roughly approximate, as it does fluctuate a little bit based on temperature. So if the AC comes on or the heater comes on, then it will fluctuate a little bit. So it could be closer to 16 right now, but it'll be somewhere between 16 and 16.5. I wouldn't say scary fast. 16 is a really nice speed to play on. If you're from Ontario, then it's probably new territory for you and you've never played on it, but it is absolutely beautiful to play on. Where it gets scary fast is when it's 18 plus. That's where I find it to be scary fast, and there's a tremendous difference between 16 and 18. If you've played on 12 your whole life, it takes a little bit of adjusting to get to 16, but you can do it and it's not too bad. But playing on 18 and over, that's where things get scary. If your fingernail touches the bowl slightly too longer, you're actually 6 feet through the head. Susan, I love where your head's at. Go to the bar, get a drink, come back, still rolling. 18 plus is scary when weather comes into play too. Wind makes a tremendous difference on an 18 plus green. Here in Canada, when you're playing on 12-second greens, wind does next to nothing to your bowl. So Doug's starting to find it here as he's got a toucher there. Seems like he's starting to get the feel back maybe, and John is still looking to find it. Got a nice little rope to get a nice second shot out of it, but we'll see if Doug can replicate his last one and prove that it wasn't just a lucky one-off. Zoom Zoom, care to elaborate on where you were playing in a hurricane? Was that in the Atlantic Championships, perchance? Beautiful bowls, Dougie. He's coming alive. John's going to chase this one down, and I don't know if it's because it felt good out of his hand or because he wants to take a better look. Tracking nicely. This could be an okay bowl. Holds up a touch, holds up a touch. There we go. Beautiful. And Doug is, of course, going to come down and take a look at this. This is treacherous waters here for Doug now after playing two beautiful bowls. You're not likely going to be able to draw that off. You would need the absolutely perfect draw shot if you're going to draw that off. So, I think that might be all he has. I don't see a whole lot of other options. Based off of John's back bowl, you can't really drive at that. You don't have much for position. Dartmouth 2019 played a tiebreaker to get into the gold medal during the start of Dorian. Kudos to you for playing in a hurricane. That is one thing I do not have a domestic regulation or rule in our policies to deal with hurricanes. We have lightning covered, we have poor air quality covered. Don't have hurricanes covered. So Doug is trying here. High and quick. Yeah, Shane, I guess you could be right. That is the extreme bowls we're talking about, playing in a hurricane. Fortunately, that is not the case here. We are just in rainy Vancouver, where you get to play indoors and listen to the sound of rain outside. John's having a real good look at this. I don't see much more than a draw. Have to be careful with it, but as long as you're on the high side, I don't see a whole lot more than a draw. It is still early enough in the end, you can get away with just taking ones the rest of the way, so you don't need to be greedy yet. Shane, I always question why people live in Vancouver, as you've just made it clear. There's only up to 3 days a year without rain. I think I would very quickly find myself depressed without having sunshine. Great effort from John. Not going to be good enough, but had his draw weight there, so that was a really good effort. So that'll be 1 to Johnny Mac. 5 ends in the book, 5-2 on the scoreboard. On the rink next door, Heren has come alive and is up 10-0 over Carter after 5 ends in their second set. Carter won the first set, so Heren's looking to force the tiebreak. On the other rink, Pat Bird is up 3-2 over Jerome Kirby. And of course, Jerome won the first set, so Pat's looking to force the tiebreak. Down at the end, Kerry Lucier is up 1-0 over Allen in their second set. Tim's tied, I think, 2-2 with Eric Galipo in their second set. And Jim Duhulke is up a couple over Pierre Vanderhoot in their second set. Yeah, Shane, that's fair. The rain washes away the snow you get here in Vancouver, so you don't really have to shovel too much. John is laughing that he's on TV again. He asked me not to put him on TV yesterday when he played Pat, and when he found out I was streaming this one, he said, "Oh, please don't." But here we go, on the TV rink once more. I'm sure he would want me to give a shout out to wife and kid at home. I'm assuming that they're watching. Hello, McDonald clan. Oh, Susan, send that good weather this way. 23 degrees Celsius in Montreal. It is about 11 degrees Celsius here in Vancouver. Doug is well through the head, so John's holding one, it looks like, at the moment. This is, of course, our last national championship of the year, after which we will take a lengthy hiatus before we come back sometime in the summer next year for our events once we get that finalized. We will make announcements on our website and social media once we do have hosts finalized. The bidding deadline was a couple weeks ago and extended to last week. Once we can confirm with the host clubs, we will let you know who's hosting what, when, where, and how. Oh, Doug getting a beautiful couple rubs. Rule number 1 in bowls, if there's a wall, use it. Make your life easy. All in the weight here. If John's got enough to grab the jack on his way through, I don't think he does. So just coming up on the inside. Either needed a touch more grass or a touch more weight. If I were Doug Prop right now, I would be looking to trail the jack back, tuck it in behind to make this really hard for John to get to. So I would definitely not be short, and I don't think he is. Tracking nicely. Look at this come back. Good grief. Just missed it on its way through, but that was a great effort. Really good effort. Quite the difference in the lines that John and Doug are taking. Doug has a much swoopier bowl, bigger, wider draw than what John is playing with. Now that John's out of bullets, opportunity here for Doug to score 4. If he can trail the jack back a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, pick your poison. Tricky part, though, is that you need to have the line and the weight just perfect, and with a big wide bowl, it's hard to get the combination just right. And he is trying, but just a touch too wide again. That's almost an identical bowl to his last one. We'll take a look, but I think it is just the one for Doug, which would make it 6-2 after 6 here in the second set. Doug is looking to play spoiler against Mr. John McDonald. With John being 3-2 currently in 4th place, he needs to win every game, every set he can to try and force his way into the top 2. But Doug's not having any of it. Could be a case that Doug took a few games to warm up, and now that he's warming up, he might be playing spoiler the rest of the week out here. Opening bowl here from Doug. I think it's a touch on the narrow side, but not by much. Just a size 8 shoe between Jack and Bull. Interesting. John is looking to play on the opposite hand, despite the fact that the marker just told him that Doug's bowl was 3/4 in front. John had a good line, but coming up a meter short. It has forced Doug to switch hands too, which I'm not sure why. After playing such a good opening bowl, I have no idea why you would change hands. Despite my confusion on why you would change hands, Doug has proven me wrong, saying I'll do what I want to do and just draws in a beautiful bowl. You and I both, Susan. You and I both. Drives me nuts when leads do that. Switch hands. General rule for leads and for singles players is pick a hand and master it. Don't go switching back and forth and back and forth. But Doug is clearly in the zone here. Look at this. He has found his groove once again. John's asking if he can come take a look. Tough waters to be in for John. I can see in the comments there Jesse saying to just blast it. I'm torn on what I would do here. If you're a skilled player and want to win, this is very easily played where you don't need to blast this yet. You can come in off of Doug's bowl. You can outdraw it. There's lots of options for what you can do before blasting at it. But based off of John's 2 bowls here being far enough away, I don't think he's super confident with his draw weight right now. So that might be a good suggestion if you're not feeling your draw weight to have a go at it. He is not though, and playing a little more safe and strategic, but I think he's on the high side and back around to the tee. Best back could be setting it up for his last to blast. Opportunities here for Doug to either cover the tee or try and change the head of a bit. I would probably want to get rid of that wing bowl if I were Doug, but we'll see what he goes with. On the rink to the right, Hirenbar 2 is about to win the second set, which will force a tiebreak. They still have 2 to go, but he's already up 11-2. And on the other side, Pat Bird is up 5-2 over Jerome Kirby, but that unfinished finish Jerome counted as he's placing the mat. I think Doug is super uncertain about what to do. He just changed hands while on the mat. And Doug is just piling them in. Nope, going back to split 2 of John's at the back. That is a good placement bowl. Personally, I think I would have rather had the tee. I don't think I'd want to have them split, just because if John's going to be cracking at that, it's going to the tee. Great shot there from John. We'll see if we can watch that again. Kabingo. And he even got Doug's bowl out too. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, I'm glad we got it for you, John, so you can go and watch that later. That was something else. Michael Scott, wonderful shot. Mr. Dunder Mifflin, how are you? I believe that was a couple to John. I will tentatively update the scoreboard to say he scored a couple, but I'm not quite sure how many he counted there. You know, it's funny you say that, James. I actually am a strong believer that the takeout shot is underused in bowls, and it might just be from the tournaments I play in Ontario where people don't drive that much, but I will say that it's not used effectively. There are far too many people who drive when they shouldn't be, but I also think that there are lots of opportunities to drive where people don't. So the marker has updated the scoreboard to say 6-4 after 7, so we're all good there. 2 ends to go. Doug Props up 2. John needs to score at least 3 over the next 2 ends to force a tiebreak. A tied set will not result in a tiebreaker. Too true, Susan. We don't practice it enough. If you were to ask the Master Blaster every practice that he's out there, it includes drives. You don't just wake up one day being good at it. That said, when to use it matters. I am not saying that it should be used every end by any means, but I do think that there are a lot of missed opportunities where people could be driving had they practiced it, where they actually good at using it. I think the reason why I'm keen to see drives more in bowls, at least in Ontario, is because the green quality often prohibits you from drawing. So if you know there are funky lines or the runs are there or it's just not possible to play the shot you want to play, then why bother fighting the green? But that needs to be a practiced shot in your tool belt before you can just pull it out. Game at hand here. John is putting up a fight here, saying, I'm not going to go down easy. If you want to beat me in straight sets, you're going to have to earn it. And Doug is just short, so John's still holding 2. See if John can plop in a third and try and take the lead going home. I think he has. And he even left a hole as well, so that's a well-placed bowl, but also gives Doug something to rest on if he's wide. Coming up short, I think John McDonald may have actually taken the lead to go up 7-6 coming home. All right, 8 ends in the book for this second set. 1, 2, 3. I believe John McDonald's taking a 1-point lead coming home on this second set, meaning he just needs to count to force a tiebreak. And Dougie Prop just needs to count to win the game. I will not, James. First bowl, arguably the most important bowl. Put the pressure on, dictate how the rest of the end is going to shape. John is going back around to the tee, well past the tee actually. Leaving the door wide open for Dougie. Doug playing the opposite hand. Looks to be a slightly better bowl than John's at this stage. Still about 2.5 feet past the jack, but it's number 1. See if John can make the adjustment here. Based off of his body reaction on that, I don't think he liked it at all. He is looking around at anywhere but. He didn't like it, but it's probably 2 meters short, maybe 3 meters short, and could be directly in his draw line. That looks like that would have been a really good draw line coming back, so that could be a very nuisance value bull later on. Doug was playing the other hand, so shouldn't impact him whatsoever. Doug just needs to take about 2 feet off his last to be all over it. It's interesting with Doug's first bowl as he has got shot and the tee covered at the same time. And he's made a adjustment there. Now he's 1.5 feet in front. Putting the pressure on Johnny though, saying if you want to win this, you're going to have to earn it. In the neighborhood, but it looks spicy. Where will it stop? Will he find a friend? He will find a friend. The flop N makes that look like a measure to me. From my point of view, I would put a tape on that from here, but interesting that Doug's not even asking. Doesn't even care. Doesn't impact his shot whatsoever. Still sticking with this hand. Still just looking to draw. That looks to be a touch on the high side. Don't know if it'll come back all the way. It is trying. It is trying. Whew. Good effort. Not quite enough, though. John's going to ask who shot. The marker's taking a look, saying he's down 1 and a measure. Interesting. 1 and a measure. So I guess Doug's last bowl did come back enough to make it at least worth a measure. And this is John's last bowl. He didn't come down and take a look at all, which I'm kind of surprised by. He has to score here to force a tiebreak, and look at this. My goodness, look at this. Boom. Take that. Coach Fitzgerald, nice to have you with us. He is in fact playing with a -1 handicap. Yeah, no, Doug Prop just won the first set, so that's how I'm indicating he won the first set. It's funny you bring up handicaps, though. That is something that I want to investigate for bowls to make tournaments a little more even, a little more fair. Start introducing the handicap system so that way experienced bowlers and weaker bowlers can actually have a more competitive game, and a 36-2 game could still actually be meaningful. Perhaps novice players get off to a 10-0 head start. Perhaps national champions are down 15-0 before the game begins. Food for thought for all those club events where you can be creative with your own conditions of play. So Doug's last bowl here. If he makes it, he wins the game. If he misses, we're off to a tiebreak. He is trying. Ooh. 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 Interesting, Shane. I would love to learn more about that. We do have some tournaments in BC where if you have a novice, you get a points advantage. I would love to learn more. So that last shot from Doug was something else, but that is going to give him a point to tie this second set, which means the game is over. So Doug won the first set, they tied the second set, and that's the game going to Mr. Doug Prop, playing some spoilers. So that's it. That's all for this game. The next game that we are going to be doing is Rainbow Lung versus Linda Ng. And that's going to be starting in probably a good half hour, I would think. Looking down on rink 1, they've only played 4 ends, so we've got a little time to kill. We'll be back on our YouTube channel. Come back in about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and we'll catch you then.